The last words spoken by Jesus before his crucifixion were recorded in the Gospels, and are traditionally known as part of the 7 last words of Jesus on the cross. They cover themes such as forgiveness, compassion, fulfilling the mission, and trusting in God, representing his final testimony and teachings to his followers and disciples. These final moments are filled with spiritual meaning for Christians, symbolizing the love and sacrifice of Jesus for all humanity. Shortly before being crucified, Jesus went through intense suffering and humiliation. After a night of judgment and interrogations, he was sentenced to crucifixion, a form of public execution reserved for criminals during the Roman era. Before being taken to Golgotha, the place of crucifixion, Jesus was subjected to scourging, a painful and cruel punishment. In addition to the physical violence, he was publicly humiliated. Roman soldiers placed a crown of thorns on his head, mocking him, calling him the King of the Jews. They dressed him in a purple robe, a symbol of royalty, while ridiculing him. Jesus was then forced to carry his own cross to the place of execution, but, exhausted from suffering and blood loss, he fell several times along the way. At that moment, a man named Simon of Cyrene was compelled to help him carry the cross. Along the way, there was a crowd gathered. Some cried, others sarcastically said, "If you are the Son of God, save yourself." The Pharisees shouted with contempt. The soldiers laughed at him, but Jesus remained silent. When he encountered a group of women crying for him, Jesus comforted them, showing that, even in such a painful moment, his compassion and care for others remained. Upon arriving at Golgotha, Jesus was nailed to the cross, beginning the final moments of his life. Jesus' hands were pierced by nails, and his blood flowed from his body onto the ground. In that torment, Jesus spoke words that would change the course of human history forever. The words spoken by Jesus can be considered the greatest speech of all time. Let's begin. In that moment of extreme suffering, Jesus continued to demonstrate profound love, and in his first words on the cross, he asked God to forgive those who were crucifying him. He said, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." To everyone's surprise, these were the first words Jesus spoke. No one expected to hear words of forgiveness amid such cruelty. Jesus, the Creator and Lord of the universe, had all the power in his hands to condemn those who were crucifying him with a single word, yet he chose forgiveness. Jesus did not repay evil with evil, and his first words reveal the goodness and love he carried in his heart. The message contained in this phrase teaches us to transcend resentment and hatred, forgiving even those who hurt us. Forgiving does not mean ignoring the pain or approving the actions of others, but rather freeing ourselves from the chains of bitterness that can imprison the heart and mind. This phrase shows us the importance of understanding human limitation and ignorance. Jesus was in a situation where forgiving seemed impossible, but he recognized that his tormentors did not fully understand what they were doing. This perspective helps us look at others' mistakes with empathy, understanding that they often act out of fear, misunderstanding, or spiritual blindness. These words of Jesus inspire us to assess our own reactions to injustices and find a path of forgiveness that goes beyond our emotions, a conscious forgiveness that is rooted in understanding, love, and inner peace. These values elevate our spirituality and connect us to the true purpose of living in harmony with God and with others. When someone hurts us, our natural reaction is to seek revenge or hold a grudge. However, Jesus shows us a different path. Forgiveness frees us from the weight of the past and allows us to move forward with greater lightness and peace. Those who do not forgive become physically and spiritually ill. Forgiveness is the cleansing of the soul, the healing of the mind, and the cure for bitter memories. Those who do not forgive remain prisoners of their resentment. Jesus taught us that evil is inherent in humanity. It does not come from outside, nor from the environment. It comes from within our hearts. We are all wrongdoers because it is from the human heart that evil thoughts, immorality, theft, murder, adultery, and other evils that plague humanity arise. That is why Jesus rejects the idea that a person is merely a product of the environment in which they were born and grew up. Throughout his life and teachings, Jesus showed that forgiveness is not just an act of compassion toward others, but also a path to our own freedom and healing. When we forgive, we free ourselves from the weight of bitterness, hurt, and resentment, emotions that can imprison us and corrode our inner peace. Jesus knew that forgiveness allows us to put aside the suffering caused by negative experiences, fostering peace in the heart. He taught us to love even our enemies, not only as a commandment, but as a practice that connects us to the essence of God's unconditional love. The second phrase Jesus spoke on the cross was, "Truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise." These words, spoken by Jesus to one of the thieves crucified beside him, carry a promise of comfort and hope that echoes to this day. Imagine that moment. The thief, repentant, recognized the holiness of Jesus and, in his final moments of life, trusted in him. This man, despite his mistakes and a life of wrong choices, received the promise of being with Jesus in paradise. This phrase shows us that no matter how distant we may feel, God's love is always ready to welcome us back with a kindness that surpasses all human understanding. Jesus offered the thief a response full of mercy and forgiveness. He did not demand explanations, a list of good deeds, or a flawless history. All that was required was sincere repentance and faith for him to be accepted. This demonstrates that God's grace is greater than our mistakes, greater than our past. Jesus looks at the heart, at the sincerity of our repentance, and at our willingness to trust in him. Even if our lives have been marked by failures and sins, God's grace does not diminish. It remains accessible to all who turn to him. The promise of being in paradise means more than just a place of rest after life. It is an image of peace, freedom, and a full life beside God, where fear, suffering, and pain have no place. This invitation to paradise is an opportunity for renewal, a chance for us to embrace a faith that transforms us and gives us the strength to move forward, even in the most challenging situations. In that moment of pain on the cross, when every word required effort, Jesus looked at his mother, Mary, and spoke the third phrase, "Woman, here is your son." Turning to his disciple John, he said, "Here is your mother." With these words, Jesus was not only speaking of a family connection. He was taking care of those he loved, ensuring that Mary would have someone to support her and be by her side. This scene reveals both the deeply human and divine sides of Jesus, showing that even in the midst of his suffering, his heart was focused on those he loved. He wanted Mary to be protected and cared for, demonstrating that God's love is present in both the small and big concerns of life. This gesture of Jesus also teaches us the importance of caring for one another, especially in difficult times. He reveals that true love is found in care and support, particularly for those who need help. Just as Jesus entrusted Mary to John's care, he invites us to be sources of kindness and support for those around us, even when we are facing our own challenges. The love and compassion Jesus demonstrated inspire us to look beyond ourselves and make a difference in someone else's life, being a pillar of support for those in need. Moreover, this scene gives us a profound understanding of the value of maternal love and the love of a child. By caring for Mary, Jesus demonstrates the importance of honoring and valuing those who have given us so much love, those who have been with us in joy and in pain. He did not let his suffering take away his commitment to being a loving son. In this way, Jesus inspires us to always care for those who have been a constant presence in our lives, especially when they need us the most. Caring for, respecting, and valuing those who love us is a way of expressing divine love. The third phrase spoken was when Jesus, on the cross, cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" He expressed a pain so intense that few can imagine. In this moment, Jesus carried the weight of the world's sins, a burden that brought with it a sense of abandonment and crushing loneliness. By uttering these words, He not only showed his suffering but also revealed the most human side of his experience, feeling what many of us have felt, that sense of emptiness and abandonment when it seems that God is distant. This cry of Jesus reminds us that even in our moments of greatest suffering, there is a way out, a hope, and that we are not alone in those moments of pain, for Jesus knows exactly what it means to feel abandoned and forsaken. This passage also teaches us that it is natural, and even expected, to have moments of weakness and doubt when everything seems lost. If even Jesus faced the feeling of abandonment, it means that experiencing pain and loneliness is part of our human journey. However, these emotions are not the end. They bring us closer to God, making us seek comfort and strength in Him to move forward, knowing that our pain is not ignored but understood by God, who is present in every moment. When we look at this moment of Jesus, we have the opportunity to perceive our own pain with a new perspective. He suffered so that today we could have hope, so that we would know that pain and the feeling of abandonment do not have the final word. By following Him, we learn that, no matter how dark the path may seem, there is always a promise of light and divine presence that embraces us, even when our vision cannot see this truth. The fourth word spoken was, "I thirst," Jesus said. He was revealing once again how deeply human his experience was. Nailed to the cross, in a moment of extreme pain, this expression shows that, despite being the Son of God, he also felt thirst and physical suffering like any of us. These words carry immense weight because they show that he chose to live and endure what we feel, even the most intense limitations and weaknesses of a body that feels thirst, pain, and exhaustion. This moment reveals that Jesus understands our needs and vulnerabilities. He is not distant or indifferent to what we go through. He knows what it means to feel pain, thirst, and discomfort. By saying, "I thirst," Jesus was not just asking for something to ease his physical need. He was identifying with each of us, showing that he understands our own thirst for relief, for peace, for love, and often for answers that seem difficult to reach. He also shows us that it is human to thirst, to desire, to have pain and needs. In his humility, Jesus demonstrates that there is no shame in admitting our limitations. On the cross, he teaches us that, even in the deepest suffering, we can express ourselves, open up, and seek help and comfort. Furthermore, the cry of "I thirst" is a reminder for us to look around and notice those who, like Jesus, are suffering and in need of relief for their own thirsts. Jesus' thirst awakens in us a sense of compassion and service, alerting us that we can be instruments of comfort for others, helping ease their pain just as he eases ours. His thirst makes us reflect on the need to be more sensitive to the thirst of others, to see their needs that may be hidden, but are as real and deep as our own. Finally, this declaration also prompts a reflection on our spiritual thirst. Many times, we seek to fill the emptiness within us, but we only find true satisfaction when we seek the water that comes from God, which Jesus described as living water. He, who suffered from thirst, offers us this spiritual water so that our souls never again need to seek solace in sources that do not fully satisfy. This leads us to realize that, just as Jesus opened up to us in his vulnerability, we can open our hearts to God in search of true peace and rest. In his fifth word, Jesus declared, "It is finished." With this phrase, he was announcing something grand and definitive. His mission was complete. These words were not of defeat, but of a profound and meaningful victory. Jesus came into the world to save, to show God's love, and to open a path of reconciliation between us and the Father. And there, on the cross, he had finished that work. This declaration of Jesus is like a seal of guarantee, revealing to us that everything necessary for our redemption has already been done, that nothing more needs to be added. These words bring comfort and peace because they mean that Jesus did what we could not do for ourselves. He paid a price we would not be able to pay. By giving his life, Jesus removed the barrier that separated us from God, and now we have direct access to the Father. The feeling of guilt, of insufficiency, of not being good enough, These are all dissolved in the certainty that He has already accomplished everything for us. This completed work tells us that we are loved, that we are not alone, and that our past no longer has the power to hold us back. There is a message of hope here that changes the way we face our struggles and challenges. If Jesus completed His mission to the end, facing pain, rejection, and suffering for our sake, it reminds us that we too can find strength to move forward. He shows us that there is a greater purpose, a plan worth pursuing, and that even the difficulties we face are part of something that, one day, will make sense. He asks us to trust that, just as He completed His work, our lives are also in the hands of God, who cares for and guides every step we take. When we hear, "It is finished," we are also called to let go of the idea that we need to deserve God's love. What Jesus did on the cross assures us that God's love is unconditional, that He has already done everything to rescue us and receive us into His arms. It is a love that demands nothing in return, only that we accept it, that we allow ourselves to be enveloped by it. This gives us a unique freedom, a peace of knowing that we are embraced exactly as we are. This phrase reinforces the idea that we should live in gratitude, no longer trying to justify ourselves or prove our worth, but simply receiving the gift Jesus gave us. He has already done everything, already achieved the victory that guarantees us life and freedom. And so, He shows us that, even though the battles may continue, the essential has already been settled. Our journey now is to learn to live in this certainty, knowing that, with Him, there will always be a continuation. The sixth phrase Jesus said was, "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit." This gives us a profound example of trust. At the most painful moment of His life, Jesus chooses to surrender completely into the hands of the Father. This final phrase is much more than a farewell. It is an act of surrender and total trust. Even in suffering and pain, Jesus surrenders to God's love and care, showing that He knew He was safe, even when everything seemed lost. These words touch us because they reveal Jesus' unwavering faith. He teaches us that, in our most difficult moments, when our strength seems to fail and the way seems dark, we can still trust in God. It's as if Jesus is telling us that, in any circumstance, there is still a safe place where we can rest. That place is found in the arms of the Father. This is a message that brings hope because it helps us understand that, no matter what circumstances we face, we will always have God's support, ready to embrace us. By surrendering His Spirit, Jesus teaches us the beauty of trust. Often, we are tempted to carry our burdens alone, to fight without rest, trying to solve everything on our own. But Jesus teaches us that it is possible to surrender to God's will, trusting that He has a greater plan and that He is capable of caring for us in ways we may not even imagine. This surrender is liberating because it allows us to rest, even amidst the storms, knowing that our life is in the hands of someone who loves us deeply. This moment also teaches us about the importance of our relationship with God. Jesus called God Father, expressing a closeness and affection that makes this surrender even more meaningful. He didn't surrender to a distant being, but to a loving Father, someone with whom He had a deep and intimate relationship. This is something we can all seek. God is our Father, someone in whom we can trust fully, someone to whom we can surrender with the certainty that we will be safe. This final phrase of Jesus makes us remember that, just as He did, we can also entrust our worries, fears, and insecurities to God. Even if we sometimes lack understanding about what is happening, we can trust with confidence that we are being guided and cared for. This surrender, which for Jesus was a moment of love and trust, can also become for us a source of peace and hope. Thus, our journey continues, and each day, we learn what it means to trust more and more. When we reflect on this surrender, we realize that, just like Jesus, we need to trust God with our moments of pain and uncertainty. It doesn't mean we will never face difficulties, but by surrendering everything into the Father's hands, we find relief, a security that strengthens us and calms our hearts. To surrender to God is to acknowledge that there is a greater force guiding our steps, and that we are not alone in our battles. Jesus teaches us that, even in the greatest trials, we can rest in the certainty of divine love. This act of surrender by Jesus serves as an example for us to cultivate a deeper faith, a faith that urges us to let go of control and make space for God to enter and work in our lives. When we say, "Father, I trust in you," we are releasing the weight we carry and allowing ourselves to live with more lightness. This trust transforms us and prepares us to see life with new eyes, with the certainty that, no matter what happens, we are in the arms of the Father, supported by a love that never fails. May your heart be filled with peace and trust, knowing that, just as Jesus entrusted everything into God's hands, you too can trust that He cares for every detail of your life with unconditional and eternal love. I hope you enjoyed the video. Share it with others so they can benefit from this message as well. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to receive our new content on spirituality. May God bless your life. See you soon.